So what's going on, guys? This is DIY Dan again, and this is another episode of Backroads Arizona Dunes Edition. We're out at Glamis between Christmas and New Year's, and it is pretty crazy out here. But what I'm going to go over in this video, besides some footage from Glamis, is adding additional switches to my Razor. Because I have added so many accessories, there was not enough rocker switch slots in the original dash, so I went ahead and cut out slots for 4 additional rocker switches on the left-hand side of the steering column. Some of the extra accessories that I added is lighted whips, reverse lights, cornering lights, and another LED spotlight in the bumper. And I'm going to show you what those do and what light they give off as well. In this video, I'm strictly going to go over cutting the slots and how I did that on the left-hand side of the column. If you want more information about how I wired those switches in, I do have a video that I'll post at the end of this one, and you can check that out if need be. So if you enjoy this video and it gives you some good information, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. The whole concept of my channel is to give you the most information in the least amount of time as possible, so I don't waste your time. And being as though this is only my 4th, maybe 5th time to the dunes, I did learn a couple things and I made some changes because of what I learned, and we're going to go over that as well. So let's get to it. So right here, guys, is what the factory dash allows you to put in for switches. And I'm going to explain to you what I have on these, so that way you can see why I added more. So right here I've got a horn. This is your factory headlight switch. Obviously you got your 4-wheel drive switch. I did put my lighted whip on a switch right here. This was where I had my LED light bar, and I actually moved it over to the other spots. This is for my rugged radio, and I have a video on that if you want to see why I put that one in there. And then I've got a USB port, dual connection, so we can charge our phones, etc. So that's why I ended up adding these 4 switches here. Now these were indented without being cut out, so I cut those ones out, and then I decided to add 2 more that I made my own pattern and cut those out as well. So right here is my LED light bar. Then I've got my front cornering lights. This switch right here is actually my spotlight or LED light bar that's in the bumper. And then this is my rear lights. So I just figured I'd show you what my lights do. This is the rear lighting that I put on. So right there, that is low beams with the factory headlights. And then I got high beams. This is the upper light bar. Lower light bar. And the cornering lights. I'm going to shut the cornering lights off now, so you can see how that, and the main reason I added those is for when I'm out at night and I need to make a turn, I want to be able to see where I'm going. So you can see that really helps with that. There's without it, with it. So that is just the upper light bar that I have, and this is the lower light bar. So the top 2 spots actually had little indentations to tell me where to cut. The bottom ones I marked out with a pencil. I already cut the one on the left-hand side there, you can see. I ended up heating up a razor blade to help it melt through the plastic a little bit. When it started to become hard to cut, I would just reheat the razor blade with the torch again and continue the cut. I intentionally made the hole small at first because I can always make it bigger, but once you go too big, you are SOL. So after cutting the main hole out, then I would put the switch up there, see where I needed to trim it a little bit more, and do it little by little until I had a snug fit putting the switch in the hole. Now obviously before you ever attempt something like this, make sure you go behind the dash and feel to make sure that there is nothing behind there that you're going to cut into or is going to block you from putting the switches in place. So right here I'm just trimming off a little bit of material in the corner that I needed to make that switch fit. Now obviously there's other methods to cutting something like this out. I've used a drill bit and done the 4 corners and then connected the dots basically. You could also use a Dremel with a burring bit, and that will cut through plastic pretty easily as well. I did that putting my pass-through bezels in for the rear seats on this Razor. So there's other ways to do it. This just worked out nicely for what I was trying to accomplish. So as far as what I learned on this trip is, one is we need a noise machine, especially on the week between Christmas and New Year's, because there's going to be a lot of fireworks going off. There was people popping off fireworks up until about 2 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier or later, depending on how you want to look at it. And once again, I like a good fireworks show, but it is highly illegal in California, so keep that in mind. And there's no reason to be popping them off till that time in the morning. What I usually like to do if I know who did it is when I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning to go riding, because there's less people out in the dunes at that time, I like to go right by their camp and throttle up my engine on my Razor or sand car to wake them up, since they seemed intent on keeping everybody up until 2 o'clock in the morning. So right here you can see how busy the campsites were. The other reason I'm showing this clip is because the half windshield on my Razor would, depending on where the sun was at, create a really bad glare and make it hard to see. So I ended up taking it off about halfway through the trip. So I'm going to go into a couple riding things that I noticed. And like I said, I've only been here 4 or 5 times, so I am no pro at the dunes by any means. However, I do go to the cinders quite a bit in Arizona as well, and these same things apply there as they do here at the dunes. So if you've only been to the dunes 1 or 2 times, they might come in handy for you. So here's a quick video of one of the flagpoles midday, and here is a video of me going riding in that exact same location earlier that day at about 7:30 in the morning. So obviously for me, the best riding is first thing in the morning. If you get a nice wind going at night, you'll have a lot less ruts. Now this was still pretty rutted just because of how busy it was this week. But even on this busy of a week, I was still able to get some good riding in first thing in the morning when there wasn't as many people out there. The other thing that happened this weekend is at China Wall, 2 people rolled their Razors going up it. And I can almost guarantee you the reason that happened is they lost momentum climbing the hill and almost came to a stop before trying to turn around. So I gave this analogy in another one of my videos, but I'm going to do it again just because of the fact that 2 people went over trying to climb China Wall or hills similar to this. These aren't quite as drastic as China Wall, but the concept is the same. When you're climbing these hills, if you don't have the power and the momentum and speed to make it all the way to the top, you need to turn around before you lose that momentum. Think of it as a roulette table at a casino. When they spin that ball at first, it has high speed, high momentum, and it stays up on the edge. As soon as it loses that speed and momentum, that's when it falls down. That same concept applies to any UTV, sand rail, quad, etc. in these hills. You need that speed and momentum to hold you against that hill. So if you do go halfway up a hill and stop, your best bet is to just coast down and not try and turn around at that point, because you're going to be way more likely to go on your side trying to turn around when you have no speed to hold you against that hill. Now obviously when I'm giving this analogy, I'm talking about a very steep incline, not just a run-of-the-mill hill. If you do want to make it up that hill and you don't make it the first time and you turn around and come back, all you need to do is get more momentum and more speed at the bottom of that hill to give you more momentum and speed to climb the hill. Another thing I was very pleased with on this trip was the adjustment I made to my shocks as far as the ride height goes, because the last time I was here, I bottomed out a handful of times and I was driving more aggressively because I was more used to the dunes. And I did not feel myself bottom out one time. And I do have a video on that as well if you want to scope that out. The other thing that's very critical out at the dunes is you want to run your suspension as hard as you possibly can, because that will create less body roll, because the more body roll you have, the more the weight is shifting and may make it easier to put it on its side. Plus, the harder the suspension, the less chance you have of bottoming out, and when you bottom out, that's when you're going to break stuff. One other thing I did notice on the last day I was there is it was pretty wet first thing in the morning. So right here you can see the sand was caking up on the paddle tires. I definitely noticed a difference in speed. I was moving much slower, and I also noticed that the engine temperature was climbing more than usual, so it was definitely working the engine harder. So definitely something to watch out for if you plan on running big hills and stuff on a wet morning. So hopefully this video gave you some good information and it helped you out. If so, once again, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. As with all my videos, guys, my whole concept is to give you the most information in the least amount of time as possible, so I don't waste your time. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.